And big welcome to Neve and thank you for coming along this afternoon to speak to us about getting ready for Dublin. So all of the students on this call, you've all secured your placement in Dublin. Some of you have secured this a couple of months back. There is some organisation that you need to go to Dublin, and I know a few of you have been asking me questions. So hopefully today we'll be able to answer some of your questions. But in essence, this is your session. This is session for students. And we have 2 students here who have been through the process. So if you have any questions, anything you want to ask, please put your hand up and ask here today, and we'll try and help you. Because whatever your question is, I'm sure there's other people on the call that also want to know that information. So definitely don't let this go past without asking questions. So Neve is an actuarial student placed in Dublin. Neve's originally from Newry, would that be right, Neve?
Yeah, Banbridge, Newry.
Banbridge, Newry, okay. And then Sankia then is one of our finance students who went in placement, and Sankia is an international student. So Sankia had the additional fun, I would say, Sankia, of applying for her work permit and her visa and so on. So Sankia is going to be of particular interest for any students on the call who are in the process of or need to start the process of applying for their work permit. So I'm sure Sankia will be able to help you out with that. So go ahead and make a start. So what we're just going to do is, as I go through each point, I'm going to ask Sankia and Neve to comment on each one of these points, just to give their flavour of what they did. Okay, so most of you at this stage will have received a contract from your employer. You already probably have requests from your employer for various pieces of information, and 2 of those main pieces of information that they're going to be asking you for are your PPS number and a bank account to pay your wages into. And this needs to be a bank account where euros can be paid into as well. So with the PPS number, for anyone who doesn't know, it's really the equivalent of the national insurance number in the UK, and you need to provide that to your employer just to put you through payroll properly. So Sankia and Neve, do you just want to give a comment on, Neve, I suppose, first of all, being a home student, what process you went through to get the PPS number?
Yeah, so the PPS number, prior to COVID, you actually had to go to an in-person meeting for that. But now, if you just Google something like PPS number, my account, you'll be able to apply for that just through the website, the tax website for the South. And you need to actually make sure that you send them your whole employment contract, because a lot of us got pulled up last year. It was very difficult to upload the full 30-page PDF. So people were uploading maybe the first 2 or 3 pages, but they're very strict. So you need to make sure that you do manage to upload your full details. Otherwise, it'll end up being a bit more complicated for you. But other than that, it's quite simple, really. Just go onto the website and then it'll take you through it step by step.
Okay, so once you get the contract, would I be right in saying maybe 2-3 weeks turnaround, or is it quicker now, Neve? Can you remember?
I think it varies. It depends on whether you get asked further questions. Some people were getting theirs in 2 weeks. Some people were taking maybe a month, and then I think some people got it within a week if everything just went smoothly.
Smoothly. Okay. What I would say on the PPS number and the bank account number, if your employer's asking for that and they also need your contract signed and you're waiting to get this information, some students wait and don't reply to their employers until they get everything in. Please reply to your employer and let them know at what stage you're at, because they can get some of your paperwork and then the PPS number and the bank account can follow at a later date. So please don't sit on your documents, get your documents processed and let them know that this information will follow. So as long as they have this to process your payroll, and that's the most important thing. So for you, Sankia, and the PPS number, was there anything different that you needed to do? Any other complications that you maybe came across?
Yeah, so for us, for the PPSN number, you require your work permit. So the second you get your work permit, you can apply for the PPSN number. And I remember it taking quite a while for me. I think it took a month or so. And you can also start working before you receive your PPSN number. You just get taxed as an emergency tax, and then you get reimbursed for it. So don't panic if you don't get your work permit on time, and your PPS number, everything, it'll be okay.
Yeah. So we need to get the work permit sorted. Yes. So yeah, as you said, don't panic. I mean, you will get more wages taken out, but you will get that back. So the PPS number is really to help with payroll and to help with tax. So anybody, any questions about the PPS number they're not sure about? No, I think it's a fairly straightforward part, so it's not so complicated. So then the Southern bank account, so you do need a bank account where your employer can pay euros into, and not just your employer. If there is turing funding, while you're in placement, they'll also require a bank account that they can pay euros into as well. And I know people always open Southern bank accounts, but in recent years, people seem to be opening accounts like a Revolut and so on. So I don't know, Neve and Sankia, if this is something or whether your employers allowed it. So not all employers allow Revolut. So, yeah, go ahead, Sankia.
Yeah, I was using W, and it was fine. My employers were happy with it, and it also made the process a lot easier because it's all online, so you don't have to actually be in Ireland while you do this. So you can open up a Revolut UK account, and then if you convert pounds to euros within the app, it just opens up a euro account automatically. So that becomes very easy, and you can then copy your account details and send it on to your employers and also for the tutoring.
Yeah. So just for students on the call, a lot of students seem to be using Revolut, but just double check with your employer that that's okay for you to use that. Neve, I don't know, were you allowed to use? What did you use?
We were allowed to use Revolut, but for me, because I'm living very near Newry, it was actually 601. I was able to go down to Dundalk and open an account with Bank of Ireland. And in terms of charges, a lot of people would go for the Revolut Premium, which is about £7, and a Bank of Ireland account is about £6. So like £6 a month for the two of them. So like it's very close. The only difference is, I suppose, Revolut isn't actually a regulated bank. So if something happens with Revolut, then you might be a bit in trouble, but most people wouldn't worry about that in the 1 year that you're going to be using it. If you're thinking long term, if you plan to then hope for a graduate job in Dublin, things like that, it might be worthwhile getting the Southern bank account sorted now so that you don't have to worry about it in final year, things like that. Other than that, Revolut is just as good. It's great.
Yeah, and it's maybe, a good starting point for students, and maybe when they're down in Dublin, they could transfer over to an actual bank, then it might be an idea. So that's a good point, Neve. It's maybe not a long-term solution, but it's maybe just a good sort of stopgap to sort that out. And then with the bank account, so going into the actual branch in Dundalk, what do you have to take with you then, Neve?
You do need to take your proof of ID and proof of address. You have it right on the slide there. What I would say is I would ring ahead in advance, because things change really quick with the banks nowadays. You might actually be able to do it completely online as well. It depends on what kind of account you're opening. So if you have a bank in mind that's near you, I would ring ahead and just check whether you even need to go in, because it might be equally possible to do it on the internet now. So.
Yeah. So two options there for people, but I suppose the main message is you most definitely do, even if you're remote working or whatever, they will need you to have an account where they can pay euros into. And if you don't do that, well, they may not allow it, but then you're going to get significant charges if you're withdrawing money. If you're paid in euros and you're constantly withdrawing in sterling, you're going to be hit with a lot of charges there if you're doing that.
See, that's the thing. So with Revolut, if you have, I think it's just a plus account even, so that's, I think, £3 I was paying, and there's no exchange rate. So when you're converting from euros to pounds, it's completely free. So that's one advantage. If you want to be converting all the time, you could also have both accounts because it wouldn't cost you much.
Yeah. So it depends on your needs. So if you're living in Dublin, you're probably not going to be converting that much. If you're sort of hybrid between Dublin and Belfast, you might be. So just decide yourself what works best for you. And I mean, these things can be changed during placement year. You just need to update your payroll department if you're changing your bank accounts then. Okay. So any questions about bank accounts then from anyone? Nope, that's okay. Okay, so accommodation, and I think that's probably the biggest bugbear with students is accommodation and where to go. So that slide is very small, but I will send the slides out to you. I would say probably from speaking to students, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sanky and Neve, most students tend to be going to the student accommodation now. Would you say that's the way it's sort of working with students in Dublin?
Yeah, I'd say in the ideal world you would find a house, but a lot of people went down last year for multiple viewings, and basically you could be queuing for the viewing and someone in front of you just slapped down a deposit, and you've come to Dublin and like the houses are snapped up so quickly. So it takes a lot of stress out of it just going with the student place. And the other thing is, like, there's a lot to be said for your bills and stuff being included and coming home to guaranteed working Wi-Fi, heat, everything like that. It just takes a lot of pressure off from that point of view. But it is, if you're very lucky with housing, you can get something cheaper, but you just need to balance up whether that extra €100 is going to be worth it or not, really.
Yeah, and that's sort of what I'm hearing is the student accommodation, and it's newly built student accommodation, and in general, it's fairly close to where most of our students are working. You know, so the facilities are nice. You've also got companionship there as well, so there'll be a lot of Queen students in the building. And as Niamh said, all of your utilities are there. So I know in the south, if you have a private house, you have to organise your bin, you have to organise your Wi-Fi, you have to do all of that type of thing. Whereas if you're in the student accommodation, it's there for you. So just it is slightly more expensive. There is a wee bit more security with the landlord, both personal security and financial security. And as Niamh said, if you are working from home and are working hybrid, you know that your Wi-Fi is going to be there, that you know that the Wi-Fi is not going to go down in the middle of the day or anything like that. That's the Wi-Fi for the building. So Sankia, what did you do for accommodation and what would your advice be?
I stayed in student accom and it was great. Like you said, you meet a lot of people. There was also majority of the people were doing like their master's degree in and around like Trinity's within the city centre. So there were a lot of students from there, but it was really nice to socialize. And it was always happening. There was a lot of, events and also if you want to have, and social life as well. And if you're moving to Dublin without anyone else, then student accom is always great. I stayed in the second link you have there, a part-time student. So I stayed in Dorset, and it was very much in the city centre. It was only like 10-15 walk to my office, which is CIPCO. And there's also Beckett, I know, which is in the city centre as well. Great location. It's a newer building, so that's very nice. And a couple of my friends also stayed in Point Campus, which was great. It was a little bit cheaper, but I know that they don't have a lot of rooms for less people. So each apartment was shared between around 8 people. But the transport was great and the location was great. So that can be something you want to look into. They also have viewings, and I know that Aparto has also already started booking. So you could get a jump start on that right away if you want. And for houses, I have heard that Daft is a good place to look for houses. Daft.com, I think it is. Kind of like Property Pal over here. So it has more options.
Yeah. And there is that. And just for anybody, so Sankia was in Sitco and you stayed in Dorset, was that it? About a 15-minute walk.
Yeah.
So anybody going to SIG or anybody in and around the IFSC, that's where Sitco is, just in case you don't know. So to give you a bit of an idea. And then where did you stay, Niamh, just to give how far was it to your work?
Yeah, just to talk on that, I can give a whole list of companies that were beside me, and I lived in Point Campus, so it's right up at the Docklands. So if you know where like the Three Arena is, if you've ever been to concerts in Dublin, you literally can get a bus from Belfast to the bus the bus centre, and then my accommodation was like a 7 to 10 minute walk away. And across the river is Score, Hanover Ray, Grant Thornton, I think Liam Clark Peacock, like just all of those companies that are in the Docklands are so close to Point. And as a result of that, I think I have about 8 other Queen students living with me. Just 4 were in my flat, and then the rest were dotted around the rest of the building. So yeah, you can have great crack then, obviously, whenever people are coming home from work and arranging stuff to do and that sort of thing. Also, there were a couple around Smithfield that were very good and really well populated with Queen's people. But what I would say is you need to get on to viewing them, because there was 1 or 2 people that actually changed where they were applying for student accommodation after viewing it, just like with some things not being suitable, or like things being broken and stuff like that. So you just want to actually check that you're onto a good one before you end up fully booking it, that kind of thing as well.
Yeah. So the advice was maybe to start that now. So hands up anybody who's already started looking for accommodation or who maybe has secured it. The students on the call. I know a few have been asking me. Yeah, not so many, maybe well, a few people. Okay, so maybe the advice from Niamh and Sankey is maybe to go ahead and start booking that accommodation. And then did they ask you in the student accommodation for your employment contract? Did they want to see that?
No, you'd actually nearly want to not let them know that you're working in a way. Like, you'd want to tell them that you're on your placement year and you're still at your studies, because they
Okay.
don't want people to be in there just working, because that's obviously a safety thing too. You want to be playing up the fact that you are still a student.
Okay. Okay.
On your student card, stuff like that. You don't want to be coming in and saying I'm a worker. If you're applying for a house, you'd probably want to say I'm working. It depends what situation you're in and what works for you.
Yeah, because that always would have been our advice is, bring your employment contract, say you're working, but that's a very good point. If you're going to student accommodation, you are a student while you're on placement. So, as Niamh said, make sure that they know that you are a student, you're still registered with the university. But if it's private accommodation, you've probably more of a chance of getting it if you're a worker then. So that's a good point, Niamh. But just if everybody wants to start having a look at that, and most of your companies are in and around the same sort of area. So Niamh mentioned all those companies like Hanover Re, Score, SIG, Sitco, all of those companies are in and around the same area as well then. So most of our students tend to be gathered around the same. And even if you're not right beside those areas, the transport links to that area are very good, because you're right beside the main sort of like DART train station, bus station. So even if you're a wee bit further out, it's easy to get into that part of Dublin then as well. So, and then it's easy to get home then at the weekend. So if anybody does need to go home at the weekend, you're close enough to transport links.
Sorry, one more thing I wanted to just add was that Aparto accepts international guarantors. So if you don't have an Irish or UK guarantor, they do accept it, and you can still pay with installments if you have an international guarantor. So that's an advantage.
Where was that again, Sakia?
Aparto, so either Dorset or Beckett House, they accept international guarantors.
Okay. Yeah, because that's an important point, because I know some international students struggle with that. Anybody, any questions about accommodation? No, happy enough. I'll get about 20 emails after this call with all the questions. Okay, so the revenue form, if one of you wants to go through the revenue form that you need to complete. So when does your employer give you that, and what have you to fill in with that, just in case anybody is confused about that?
Yeah, so a lot of employers don't really hold your hand through this bit. So a lot of it again is walked through on the actual revenue website for the South. What you do need from your employer is like their unique revenue code. So that will allow the payroll to inform revenue how much you're going to be making. So if they don't provide that with you, they should give you that bit. You'd need to follow up and make sure that you have their revenue code, and then it's kind of linked to your My account as well. All of that stuff. It's just the Irish system for logging all of your tax and things. Once you have it set up, you don't really have to follow up on it until maybe like you might check it at Christmas and stuff like that to check you're getting taxed the appropriate rate. Your pay slip will also inform you and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's just a case of going on to the Irish Revenue website and filling in it as they kind of instruct you through.
Okay, perfect. So then transport, I suppose. So I suppose that the thing about transport, I mean, it's a fairly well connected city, and it's a fairly walkable city, Dublin as well. So for anybody who doesn't know it overly well, it is, I'm sure Niamh and Sankey would agree after being there for a year, it's a lot more walkable than what you think. So it's not a very, very big city. But transport, so if you do live further out, or if you want to live with your friends in private accommodation, check the transport and then try and weigh up you know, the benefits of living closer to work or the benefits of living further away, maybe where the rent is a little bit cheaper. Now you can get student discounts, so don't forget whenever you're on placement, you are still a student, so any student discounts like your LEAP card, for instance, you can apply for that. Some companies will give travel grants, will give bus tickets and so on. So different companies have different, I think Sitco from memory, Sankia gives some sort of assistance towards transport, don't they?
Yeah, you can either pick if you want to take the trains or the buses, and you get a LEAP card that is gives you free access to it.
Yeah, so the company give that. So some companies give it, but if they don't, you can get a LEAP card. So don't forget with the transport or with anything else, you are still a student. So take advantage of any student discounts on that. So I don't know, Niamh, when you lived so close to your work, did you use much of the transport or take a LEAP card?
I did get a LEAP card, because not just for work, you'll want a LEAP card to be able to do social stuff, to be able to get in and out of the city centre and do your shopping and stuff like that. So I would definitely recommend everybody get one. What I would say is you can't really apply for one until you've got your address sorted, because on the LEAP card website, you actually need a southern address to post the card to. But my company were really good, and they actually let me use the company address and post my LEAP card there. So then I was able to get it before I had my accommodation sorted. As in, like, I was in a student contract. That's actually a good point on student contracts. They mightn't actually line up with your employment contract. You might need to be really careful that you don't have a week either side, things like that, where you actually have to commute, which I did, which was very handy from Newry. But for some people, you might actually need to take like a wee temporary summer contract on either side of your student accommodation contract. But you should be able to figure it out fairly easy, because a lot of them do summer separate week at a time bookings. So it's fairly straightforward.
Okay, and is there much of a saving, girls, with the LEAP card?
Yeah, I would say they're definitely worth it. And even for handiness, because if you go down and you don't have one, you have to use the machine every time to get your paper ticket. Whereas if you have a LEAP card, you actually touch it to the back of your phone, and then you can top it up straight off your phone. So then you just tap it on and off whenever you're using the public transport.
Yeah, perfect. Any questions about the LEAP card or transport or travel or anything like that? No, you've been very comprehensive, you girls. All right. So Turing, for anyone knows, probably people on this call don't know, it was the old Erasmus grant, sort of done away with a few years ago, and that has turned into the Turing grant. But the Turing grant there is absolutely no guarantee, and I think I probably would have said this to Niamh and Sankia's group as well, that there was no guarantee of Turing when they went out on placement. I think you've got Turing though, Niamh, did you? Yeah, you did get it.
Yeah, we all did get it, and it really made the difference as well. Like, it was brilliant to have.
Yeah, it is a great thing, you know, and previous years we could have guaranteed it, but the last couple of years they're simply not guaranteeing it for us. So I'm not sure if the students this year are getting it. I'm not sure whether you're going to get it, but there's not really that much that you as a second year student needs to do. Like, you don't have to make an application for Turing or anything like that. So basically it's an internal office in Queen's. So we will Queen's get a lump sum from Turing into the university. And then there's an office in the university decides how to distribute that money. So what we're asked to do in the placement office, we just provide the details of all of our students who are going to Republic of Ireland on placement. And then you'll be sent out a form, probably June, July time, where you fill in all of your details. Then I get a form just to confirm that, yes, you are one of my students. And then that just works through the process. So really, you're just waiting on the chance that you'll get an email from us. So the chances are you will get the form to fill out, and we will make the application, but whether you'll get a payment or not, I can't put any guarantees on it, which is a pity, because it is a nice grant to get then. So no guarantees, and I'm certainly not the controller of the Turing grant. So no matter how many times you ask me for the money, I have no power over the Turing grant whatsoever. So the grant is getting less and less as years are going on. So we are fighting the battle for you, but there's definitely no guarantee. But that's details of it there anyway. But the form, you will be contacted with a form, and once you're on placement, then the Erasmus office contacted you directly just to confirm your placement, did they?
Yeah, I think they did. There was, I think, 3 forms that we had to fill out. So one of them was directly from Erasmus. Yeah.
Yeah. So the forms will come directly to you if this is an operation then. Okay.
And a few of the Erasmus forms actually ask you to give your direct manager a form to fill in and stuff like that. So it is pretty comprehensive, and it might take a while to get the funding released, depending on like how busy you are in work and stuff like that. But hopefully it does come through for you. Like, it was really good.
Yeah, so with this, with the Turing form or with any other forms that come through, the point would be is to try and process forms and get things, put through the system as quickly as possible. So, week in, week out, I have employers contacting me going, I haven't heard from wee Jimmy, he's not sent his forms back into me, all of this type of thing, and wee Jimmy's maybe sitting on a form, but the employer doesn't know that. So clear communication, getting back to people. And I know in the old days with Erasmus, if one student had got their form back, no students got paid. So they didn't pay anybody until everybody got the forms in. I don't know if that's changed. So you don't want to be the person who's holding everybody else's money back either. But in a general rule of thumb, you need to get back to people and give them the paperwork that they need. All right, this is more about Turing. So healthcare and insurance. So for anybody who doesn't know, there isn't an NHS in the south of Ireland. Some of your employers may provide private health insurance. From any UK citizens as well, you should be able to claim back on the NHS and get a health insurance card. So I don't know, Sankia or Niamh, if your employers provided health insurance.
Yeah, actually, most companies do provide it, but they may have less coverage. So if you can look into it once you've gotten your contract and everything, and if you feel the need to get an extra more coverage on that, you can use the same company and upgrade your plan.
Yeah, okay. And then for anybody from the north, the healthcare that you use in the south, if you have a health insurance card, it should be free at the point of contact. If you don't have the card, make sure you keep receipts and you can claim that back through the NHS then. So just make sure. So just don't think that you can walk in and it's a free service. It definitely isn't free in the south of Ireland. It's probably 80-90 euros for a GP visit, for instance. So if you have to go, it can be quite pricey, but hopefully not too many students will have to go to medical appointments when they're on placement.
Yeah, and some companies actually didn't do any of that for placement students. So you do need to check your contract and stuff like that. Some of them maybe give it after 6 months as well. They all have different systems. Like, for example, some of them have like a kind of probation period, and after the 6 months, then you do get your health insurance. But some of the Revolut subscriptions actually offer you health insurance or travel insurance and things like that, depending on how much you're willing to pay. But I would just be wary of stuff like that in case it's not actually covering what you needed to cover. So don't just assume that because you have like Revolut Premium or something that you're safe enough. I would look into it just in case.
And I would imagine if you're from the north, you probably have an e-click card. You maybe don't know it. It's maybe in your mother's purse or something like that. So double check that out and maybe make an application for that as well. So it's just something that people always aren't aware of, that healthcare isn't free in the south of Ireland. Okay, student loan as well. So as I said earlier, you're still a student while you're on placement. So any benefits that you normally get as a student, you can still get that while you're in placement. So you can still take out your student loan, apply as normal. Some students decide not to take a student loan when they're in placement. They try to use their salary to get them through the year just to see if taking that extra loan out. But if you do need to take the loan out, you're absolutely eligible to take that loan out. There's no issue with that at all. I don't know if you just want to make any comment about that, or anybody else that you know, whether they did or they didn't take it out.
Most people I know didn't take it out because we were lucky enough to have the Erasmus grant, which I think just went directly to pay for our fees. The Erasmus grant, whenever we went on to pay our fees in whatever time, August or September, all of our fees were coming up as zero and we couldn't understand. We thought that they'd just forgotten about us or something, but then it turned out that they'd subtracted our Erasmus grant into the fees or something. So we were really lucky we didn't have to take a fees grant out that year, so that was good. But if you don't get the Erasmus, you might still want to get a grant for your fees, stuff like that.
Yeah. So the Erasmus and Sharing Grant did pay for the fees and pay a lump sum, but whether they'll pay or not this year. But fees for placement year are less than their reduced fees for placement year than your normal placement, your normal year's placement fee or normal tuition fees. All right, so enrollment, so just on that enrollment, you will still be a Queen student, so making sure that you keep an eye on your emails August, September, and you enroll as a student at Queen. So we'll be sending you regular messages with that, but just keep an eye on that type of thing, because a lot of people forget to check their Queen's emails when they're on placement. And then a lot of companies, the firewall won't let you check your Queen's email and work. Would that be right? I don't know if that happened to either of you girls.
Yeah, that was the case for me.
Oh, you couldn't check yours? I could check mine.
Yeah.
So
some companies are very, very strict with external emails coming in. So making sure that if your company doesn't let you check Queen's emails, that you're doing that in the evening every so often, just having a wee check at those Queen's emails as well, especially around the like of enrollment.
Also for international students, there was the attendance forms.
Mm-hmm.
So every month, I think it was every 2 weeks, there's one attendance form that you have to fill out, and your manager is also meant to sign that form. But at the first, I used to ask my manager to sign it, but it got very repetitive. So I just started adding him onto the email, because they started accepting that later on. So I think they would accept it now. So if you just add your direct manager onto the email and reply with the filled out form for each of your attendance. This is just done so that because we still have a student visa in the UK, so to maintain that, you have to fill out your attendance and make sure you're doing it on time. You cannot do them all at once. You have to do them each time, and if you're taking any leaves from work, it has to be mentioned in the form.
Okay, so that's a very important point. So any of the international students, we have, as Sankey said, for UK VI, we need to monitor your attendance. So we need your company to confirm that you're still where you're supposed to be. So that's very important that international students keep on top of that. Sankey, I'll maybe just give you a chance now just to run through hints and tips around the work permit, the visas. There's also rolls into the same thing. So if you want to walk through the process and things to do and things not to do, I suppose, really.
Yeah, so the work permit is quite a lengthy process, not gonna lie. It was very annoying because you also have to deal with HR while doing this, because the forms have to be filled out. They have to give you a lot of information, and HR can be slow. So chase them if you need to, and get your application in as soon as possible. It does take a lot of time. Mine took about 4 months. And I don't mean to scare any of you, but there is a chance that your work permit can get denied with no fault of your own. It only happened to 3 people in the entire class, but I would be cautious of that, and you apply early, because if it does, then you have to reapply, and it can take another month or 2 when you reapply. So give that plenty of time. Chase HR if you have to. Fill out all your forms as soon as possible. There's quite a lot of form, it's a very lengthy form. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know. And after you get the work permit, only then you can apply for your visa. So but the visa doesn't take too long. It only took about 2 weeks for me. And you get your visa, which is valid only for 3 months. So that means you can enter Ireland with your visa, and then you have to take an appointment for the IRP, which is equivalent to the British residence permit. So that IRP is Irish residence permit. And that one it was like an in-person appointment, but it was fairly quick. I think it only took about half an hour when you go into the appointment. And it's just some straightforward documents that you probably already have lying around. So, and that one takes a while as well, because they post the card to you, and I think it took about a month. But that doesn't hinder any of your processes, so you can still be working. You get your IRP later on. It doesn't really affect you, but you just have to make sure that you do it before your visa expires. So within that 3 months time frame, you have to apply for it. Another thing that is for the IRP is that you have to, because we are entering from Belfast, right? So there you don't get a stamp on your visa saying that you've entered Ireland, which can be a bit of a problem because when you apply for your IRP, they need to be able to see the proof that you've entered Ireland after receiving your visa. So I would just say to hold on to your bus tickets or train ticket because that's very important. Um, Even if you have it on your email that you've booked it, just hold on to your ticket so that you can prove to them that you have entered through Belfast. But I think that's about it.
I would say with the work permit, timing is key. So as Sankia said, and I think your year is particularly slow year, but 3-4 months to get the work permit. So, if you haven't already started the application, you definitely need to get that done. On the work permit, putting as much detail in as possible. So really what they're looking at is a critical skills list. So they have to be able to see, are these students coming into these posts? Are they on a skills list that is lacking in the south of Ireland? So anybody get into a technical finance role, into an actuarial role, most definitely you will be on the critical skills list. But if you don't give them that detail, they're not going to know that. So making sure that as much detail about your degree and about your job and your job description is in that application so that then they can match you against the critical skills then, just to make it that bit more straightforward. And we do quite a comprehensive letter as well, where we put the job description and so on into the letter, so that should help. So just making sure that you're working through the process very efficiently and getting everything off very efficiently then to the company. So timing is really the key here. So any questions with work permits? Everybody's okay? Ellie, I think you've your hand up there, and that might be up for a while there. Do you want to unmute and ask us the question? Or maybe shoot her hand up. Oh, her hand's down then. It was maybe up for something else. Okay, no, that's fine. Okay, so social life, I suppose a lot of you who are going on placement already know other people who are going to Dublin on placement. So that's great. Some people mightn't know anyone who's going. So if you continue to populate the chat there for me as well and put the name of your company in to the chat. So anybody who hasn't put their company name into the chat, if you put your company name in, this chat will stay after the call. And if you're not sure, so majority of our companies take more than one student. So there's very few companies, only one of our students will be going there. So you may not know that there is actually someone else going into your office. So say, for instance, you go into finance placement and score, you mightn't necessarily know that there'll be 3 actuaries and 1 business management student going into score as well. So hopefully in this chat, you'll get to know each other then in the chat. Oh, two more score. Do you see that? So what did you have any sort of like social groups or WhatsApp groups or anything like that while you were on placement? Was there meetups or anything like that?
I actually sorted out my accommodation to be in the same group as people in the course. So like we would have been sitting in class and we knew that all of our companies were next door to each other. And so literally we would have just went to book a group room in the library and got our names down on a group list in the accommodation. And then from that, make a group chat then with a few more people in the accommodation, stuff like that, or anyone who's within like 15 minutes of where you're living. And then from there, you can do all sorts of stuff really. So it was good that way.
And if you're a finance student here and you're not sure, I mean, so there's Joel, who's a finance student, and Max is an actuarial student. You shouldn't be afraid of each other. So you should be able to, just because you don't know each other, you should be able to link up together and get something organised as well. So were you part of any sort of groups or anything like that, Sankia?
Yeah, I did the same thing as Eve. We all figured out that our companies were quite close to each other, so we booked the same student account. But once I moved there, I found out that the apartment right above me, there were 5 people in Sitco on placement in my class and never seen them before. But that was actually quite handy. So I'd say if you're staying in student account quite close to your company, chances are you would end up with your classmates right there.
Okay, and then while you were on placement, because I know sometimes there's like trips to Galway and nights out and things like that. Did you use any of that to sort of get together as social groups when you were on placement?
Yes, definitely. We had like a Christmas event and everything with work, and all the placement students formed a group there. It was quite fun.
What we ended up doing was people in like other flats in our student accommodation, we would end up booking like big cinema trips where there's loads of escape rooms and stuff. And even like Dublin has some really wacky activities that you can't really get up here. So if there was something that somebody was interested in doing, you just send it in to basically host student accommodation queens and finance people, and then anybody who wanted to go could go. And as well, near Point, there's also like tennis courts and things like that and basketball. So if anyone's into sports or even just wants to get active the odd time, like you can get together with people in the flat or nearby and go and do stuff like that.
Yeah, I remember reading portfolios. I think I must have read 5 portfolios in a row that everybody had been to the same escape room, and it was the same, and they all used the exact same photograph. I felt,
Yeah, I would have been one of those. Yeah, you
I think you
probably,
were.
I suppose you can tell who's hanging with out with like different people just based on what you write down in the portfolio.
Yeah, I felt I'd been in that escape room by the time I'd read all those portfolios, Niamh. Perfect. Okay, so definitely good. And I think it's good for yourself as well when you're in Dublin, and take advantage of, as Niamh said, there are a lot more opportunities for social life and a lot more diverse sort of things that you can go to. So definitely take advantage of, living in Dublin, not just working in Dublin. Actually take advantage of all the different things and different interests and hobbies, and maybe get a new interest and hobby in something like Dublin. So, take advantage of that while you're there. As well, because there's always something to do in Dublin. It's a good, vibrant city as well. So that's good. Okay, so some people feel homesick. To be honest, I don't even know why I have this slide in here, because I think one student has come home homesick in 15 years. So sometimes people do struggle with being away from home, but the placement office is here, your peers are there. Another good reason for staying in student accommodation. But at any stage, as you're a student, for financial reasons and academic reasons, you're still one of our students while you're in placement. So the placement office doesn't close over the summer months, which maybe can be a tricky time for people, because that's when you're making the big transition down to living in a new city and getting to know new things. So you can lift the phone to the placement office at any stage. But the firms that we work with are very good at integrating and very, very, very friendly and helping students transition into the world of work as well. So your work should be able to help you with all of that type of thing. Okay, similar with your placement role, anything like this, nip things in the bud. Your mentor is there, you'll have a mentor, buddy. I'm sure Niamh and Sankey would agree, everybody's very friendly and very helpful on placement. So all of our employers are really helpful, really friendly. They want you to ask questions, they want you to succeed. So they want to help you through the process. So if you are struggling, most definitely speak to your company first. But then again, we're here if needs be. But your company would be your first point of call if there is any struggles like that at all. So anybody, any questions to Niamh and Sankey here? That was absolutely brilliant, girls. Really great information. So hopefully that has really helped the students out here and pointed them in the right direction. So has anybody any questions for Sankey or Niamh?
See, there's one in the chat there. Someone struggling with getting that big employment contract uploaded to the PPS site. That did happen to me the first time. And so I was one of those people who tried to just send in the most relevant parts, and then they pulled me up on it and said, you need to send the full one anyway. So I wouldn't recommend trying to shortcut it or send less. If you can try and convert the file to a smaller file, or another thing that you could do is plug into your Ethernet if it's an internet problem, like try and get a good connection. But I'd say the most likely thing is if you can send a zip file or something like that, or if it's a Word document, convert it to PDF, stuff like that, to try and get the full thing through. You can just try what I did and send a summary of the most important elements of the contract, and they might accept it. And if not, you'll be actually getting to email a human rather than trying to get it through a website. So if you're really struggling, somebody on the site will be able to help you. And there's another one. Do you need a Southern address to set up Southern bank account? You actually don't. I didn't need one. I suppose it depends where you're going and what sort of account you're going for, but I don't remember needing one. I think you need a Southern address if you're going for a Southern student account. because you have to prove that you were a student in the South and now that you're going on to higher education in the South. But I just applied for a standard account and I don't think I needed proof that the address was in the South. I think I just needed ordinary proof of address.
Okay, some companies now, it's different, and I know Citco is one of those companies. Some companies will insist on a southern address for when you're there. Some companies won't insist on it. It's getting more common that companies are insisting on a southern address. I don't know, Niamh, for you, did they insist on a southern address?
Yeah, so for companies themselves, it's different from just your bank account. You will probably need a southern address, and I think that's to do with tax reasons and Brexit, because you're not allowed to be working from the UK if it's a European company, things like that. So I did definitely need to give them a southern address for that purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. So there will, and I think maybe there is a bit of a grace period of 90 days or something like that, but some will want it right from day one. Some might give you a bit of a grace period, but I think that's becoming less common, the grace periods and the allowances for that. So you will need the southern address.
Yeah.
Yeah, just as I was leaving Citco, they changed the thing. So I think you're right. It is changing now, and they want a southern address for sure.
Yeah, I think it's even in the job description, even when they're advertising the job, I think they say it right from the very start now, just to make it clear with people.
But as Niamh was saying, if there's a bit of like if it's not overlapping with your work contract and your accommodation contract, if it's just a couple of weeks, they are quite understanding of that.
Yeah.
And I think they are quite flexible as well, if it's just a bit of a grace period.
Yeah, and with any of those things, it's communicating. So it's communicating with the HR. So if there is a wee bit of a lag between securing your accommodation address and starting placement, letting people know is the main thing, and then they can accommodate around that. So anybody else, any other questions? I think we're there. Well, you know where I am anyway if you need anything. And thank you very much, Sankey and Niamh. That was really, really helpful, really, really useful. And all the best with the rest of final year. Hope everything goes well with your exams. And
thank you so much for having me.
Okay, thanks, girls. Thanks a million. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye. Bye.